5.5.
My name is Mac and I am 9.
I'm Sienna and I'm 11.
My name is Jasper Conacher and I'm 14 years old.
My name is Paul Terrace and I am 13 days away from being 18.
My name is Joni Day and I'm 51 years old.
My name is Colleen Prince and I'm 51.
My name is Gary Pomerantz and my age is a secret. No, I'm 54 years old.
My name is James Lenhart Shipman and I am just past 67.
I'm silly and sleep like a teenager.
I play a lot of sports.
Athletic, creative, and artistic.
I am fun, a little crazy, a little sassy.
Pretty passionate, a little lazy, and I have a good sense of what I care about.
I am a happy, passionate person who loves my friends and family. I'm a mom and a businesswoman.
Independent, strong, kind, loving, and probably a little bit of a bulldog sometimes.
Foremost, an American journalist, father, husband.
A human being.
People start it and then I copy them.
I think that all my friends, my parents, my brother, my sister, and my dog.
Mostly my parents, probably, and my school.
Growing up in my family.
A lot of things I would think first and foremost comes from family. I have a big family and everyone in my family has played a big role in who I am. It's as huge a role as my parents who have been astronomical in shaping who I am today, specifically around my morals and what I believe in and what I feel comfortable with.
The biggest thing that shaped my identity was my family. I'm one of 7 children and I'm the 5th. And so I often say that I was kind of lost in the middle, which has allowed me to always be somewhat independent. In my college experience, I came from a pretty small city where I didn't really have the opportunity to travel a lot or see a lot of the world, and went off to college and met kids from all over the place who'd had very, very different experiences. Certainly my career working in a global consulting firm in leadership positions, I would say having children was probably the biggest thing that influenced my identity.
I would say the strongest influence is being raised in a really strong Catholic family with 9 siblings. I think your identity of who you are is very clear. I was 9 out of 10, which gave me what probably an even stronger identity than probably some of my older siblings.
I think my identity has been shaped by the time and the place in which I was raised, and by the people who raised me, my parents foremost. I was raised in a suburb in Los Angeles, and my childhood was sort of late 60s into the 70s.
The flatlands of Ohio, that has an impact on your identity. Then the Navy, and then Aikido practice. And then I got married, and I came to work at this school in San Diego. So those 5 things, I mean, this place has had a big impact on my life. I've been here for over 30 years. And so, yes, this has an impact on my identity. I'm an MA teacher. Yes, I'm an MA teacher. That's a big idea. I'm a husband, I'm a father. All those things have had impacts on my identity.
I think it is like knowing things. I'm pretty sure no.
Something that's most common to happen, and or something that is like real.
Reality is what's happening right now.
And there was a point where I thought it was as subjective as people can have different realities, but what I think boils down to was that there's a nihilistic feel to a doomed reality, that everything's just going to be how it is, and that there's not much you can do about that. But I think reality and fate play an interesting role in how I see the world.
As we move through life, we in fact create the reality that we want. Now, that is only true to a certain extent. I'd like to say that I create absolutely everything in my own reality, but it's not true, because society does have norms at any one point in time that they create and they try to exert on individuals. And I think it's incumbent upon us to think about, do we agree with that or do we not? Does that expectation actually help us move through the world in a better way?
I think my understanding of reality is what's real to me today.
Seen through the prism of my own life experiences. And so what does that mean? Well, it means that I see things day to day in a way that I was shaped to see them by my parents and by my own educational experiences through college and beyond. And now I teach and am an author. So my reality is just that. It belongs to me.
I don't think we know what reality is. I don't think we have the instruments to know. We have the capacity to understand different realities, but we can't measure reality and find out what it is. That's reality out that window. And it's the planet. Everything else is manufactured.
My brothers and I, when I was younger, were obsessed with the Star Wars action figure sets. There comes a certain point where we can become so enamored with something that clearly does not exist. There is no Death Star. There is no Millennium Falcon, but there is the story. So where that impacts my reality or my sense of reality is that it doesn't have to be true as long as you can believe it's true, if that makes sense. We were able to fall in love with the story that we knew would never come true. So it kind of plays, it's yourself playing a trick, it's your mind playing a trick on you, allowing kind of a hope. Not necessarily for something extraordinary, but for something that you wish could be.
I grew up in a relatively conservative household, again, from a big family. There were expectations about what girls did, what boys did, that we went to church every Sunday, that you behaved a certain way. And I would say the experience that most changed my identity was college. When I got to college and I was able to see so many different and experience through friends and relationships and activities I was involved in, getting to know other kids, as well as listening to professors, that there were so many different experiences, and that we have the ability to choose our own path.
I would say for me, being 9 out of 10, one of the biggest culture shocks I ever had is the first week of college. Moving in, I had 4 roommates. There were 5 of us in a 2-bedroom, and to see all of these other girls that came from very different backgrounds than I had, certainly didn't have the number of siblings I had, and weren't as independent.
I don't know if you've ever taken a train through the South, but in this case, we were out in the hinterlands. The train was going through the Carolinas and the Virginias, and I would see these shacks out in the country. Tar paper shacks that looked like they were about to fall over. If you touched them, they would fall. And I remember asking my older brothers, "What are those?" And they said, "Houses." I said, "Houses? Who lives there?" And they said, "Negro people live there." And I was just transfixed by these houses, these shacks, and thinking, how could anyone live there? Comparing it to my own reality. which was, you know, a middle to upper middle class house in a suburban neighborhood. It stirred my curiosity, it stirred my compassion, it stirred my intellect, and I know that's where it began.
I got really interested in who shot Kennedy. I realized that even as a junior in high school, I was being lied to. That all the stuff about the Kennedy assassination was pretty much nonsense. That they had to say something to the American people to put them back to sleep.
What I define as being an optimistic cynic is I know the world's one way, and I don't necessarily like that way, but I also think it'll work out in the end. So that's changed a lot as I've gotten older.
And I think that over time, your ability to be more discerning about what is created by external forces and individuals and organizations that are human constructs, and what's basically true in our hearts about how we see the world. I think our ability to discern between those two things becomes sharpened. You learn to listen to yourself more and listen to what makes you happy and feel fulfilled, and understand when there's actual cognitive dissonance between two ideas that are trying to influence you.
I believed that those that were strong and worked hard could pretty much survive anything. And that I had this notion, right or wrong, when I was young, that the weaker didn't have as many choices, right? But in reality, though, that's not true. My perception of all of that has really changed as I've gotten older, and I certainly have incredible depth over watching people in different circumstances that I didn't have when I was younger.
So you have to pick and choose, you know, where you're going to go, what your aspirations will be. Also having kids and seeing them grow older, you realize that you're part of a long chain link that goes back, you know, through the generations back in time, as you begin to see yourself in context. And that's what really, I think, changes through time. My reality changes in the sense of context. I see myself not in isolation, but I see myself as part of all these different forces, a part of all these different communities.
The age thing, so that's the thing about the body, but the age thing also gives me a perspective, I think, because I've been around long enough to see things change and change again and change again and change back to what they were before and change back when what was something before. And so I see pattern. Age gives me a sense of pattern.
You might be exposed to different things, but it almost always will stem, even your exposure is limited to what your parents are able to allow you to be exposed to. So I would say that my mom has played the biggest role.
You know, I grew up at a time when like 99% of my friends' moms were all stay-at-home moms, and women didn't really go out and have big careers, and yet at that same time there was a lot of discussion about the women's movement. So I was graduating from college when all the role models out there were basically stay-at-home moms, and yet the external world was saying, well, you can go off and do what you would like to do. And so there were very conflicting messages out there, and I think at that time I was being influenced by those messages and trying to figure out, how do I do both of those things?
This one, certainly my accident for sure, and what it did to my kids. But I would say the bigger impact would be when Dash was born, because we almost lost him.
Having kids, you know, we're born, and then we get married and we have kids, and then we die. And it's kind of sad to reduce it to that. There's a lot in all of those experiences individually, but that's our life's course.
When I started studying Buddhism in the 70s and saw that there's a whole different sense of reality that's understood differently by millions of human beings who are Buddhists. And then somebody comes, oh, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to get a good job, 2.4 kids, white house, pick in the house, picket fence, blah, 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 blah. That's somebody's reality. Okay, I used to think that. That took me in a different trajectory.
An advertisement is like a thing to show you about like if they wanted you to like buy something, they may advertise it like on like when you're playing the game, they may have it like down on the bottom of the screen. It may say like click here to play this game.
So it's probably something that stores use to try to catch people's attention to sell more of their products.
I think that advertisements can make me feel really insecure because it's like really pretty, really skinny women doing, looking really nice, and a lot of times having like men chase after them. So that kind of makes me feel insecure sometimes, but also helps me get an idea of what I might want to buy or wear.
Absolutely. The biggest way we see advertisements, or at least the biggest way I see advertisements, is the people in them. I'm always looking at the people. I'm always trying to compare.
I would think I'm pretty savvy about understanding how marketers think about the world and what they try and do with advertising and marketing. Even I am just a human being too, and so when I get these messages or see these images, I have a visceral reaction to them. I have an emotional reaction to them, and that is what the advertisers are trying to do, and they become ever more clever and more provocative because we become more sophisticated about discerning the kind of tricks they're using to get responses from us.
Yes and no. It may influence some insignificant choices, like what kind of phone I might buy, but it doesn't impact how I would feel about myself.
I hope not. I don't know though. I'm panic-stricken that maybe it has, and it's been this subtle force, maybe a communistic force that seeped into my brain without me knowing it. But I would hope that Madison Avenue has not shaped me. But it's surely possible, I suppose, that it shaped me in ways that I don't know or understand.
Only in a cynical way. I will make jokes about it, Oh, according to them, we're supposed to do this. Let's go out and shop. Let's go buy this. Let's go buy that. But I don't mean any of it. Because really, I'm making fun of advertisements. Advertising is to convince people to buy shit they don't need. Advertising is pernicious, so I really try. I have a lot of defenses. Don't let it get to me. You're supposed to buy into this consumerist lifestyle, which is reality for a lot of people. And we want to keep it that way, because if you're comfortable buying stuff and we continue to show you new stuff, then you're not going to be active to change the system. We need that reality for you to feel comfortable. If we're continually adapting to the corporate view of the world and our consumerist lifestyle, that is a false god as far as I'm concerned.
iPod, TV.
Usually on a computer. I sometimes see it on TV, like commercials.
Usually on the computer, like on websites.
People who have a lot of like followers, and then because I know, for example, like Kendall Jenner, she has like 9 million followers on Instagram. And, so when she posts something and something that she wears, people kind of want to get that because they think she's really popular and awesome.
It's speeded up my life in a daily sense. and it's provided all kinds of factoids and, you know, information. But for the things that matter most in terms of my identity and my reality, those are too deeply rooted to be affected by gadgets.
A lot of what technology or what advertisements are trying to do is try and create a reality for the customer, try and create like the hope we were talking about earlier, the hope of like that self of themselves with the product. And I can only imagine for kids these days that are growing up seeing these super deluxe ads where it's just so realistic, and it's imprinting upon them this idea that they have to have that Cadillac if they're going to be who they want themselves to be. And every ad is trying to show you who you want to be.
We're completely surrounded by it, and sometimes you're aware of it and sometimes you're not, because we're just surrounded by it. So I'd say that for sure technology has made it easier for marketers to get to us, and also get into our heads.
Technology for sure, because we have greater access to seeing what's going on in the world.
It's made a lot of things possible. We listen to our music in a different way. We talk, communicate by phone in a different way. All of it has gotten more efficient, but it still hasn't changed the essence of the human experience.
I think your generation even has a bigger responsibility what you do with that technology. That's only because you were given it, right? I mean, it was sitting in your lap when you were born. We didn't have that kind of access. And so the more you know, the more responsible you are.
When your mind is turned over to advertisers when there's no defenses, you're going to remember stuff that you don't need to remember. It's that commercial or this product or that jingle. Why do we have to remember all that stuff? And how does that crowd out some stuff that we rather should remember? Right? I think technologically it reaches you a lot more ways now.
A child who doesn't really understand those things is pretty defenseless to those things. You know, they're just bombarded by these images. They're bombarded by clever marketing people who are targeting them specifically and understand that they're vulnerable, and so are quite defenseless in the face of that.
We're in a state of corporate fascism. It's all coming one way. It's this way, right? And this is what you do. Fascism does not have to be violent. This is fascism with a velvet glove, right? As long as we're buying stuff from us, and we're putting stuff out there, you just listen to our advertisements and things. We don't need to tell you how to act, because you act according to the way we want you to. You're consumed.
Well, I don't know.
Perfect life.
My family, home, school, sports, and friends.
Like having a bunch of very nice things and looking very nice, but also still being able to like impact the world in a good way, I guess.
You were able to let yourself believe in what you want to believe, but separate that from a fantasy world. You shouldn't be all consumed, but you should be able to diverge.
My perfect reality, in essence, would be being surrounded by my family and friends, doing super interesting work that I find fulfilling and impactful, that's making a meaningful difference in the world. That's as close as I can get to defining a perfect reality.
Literally that everybody has something to eat.
Martin Luther King's beloved community, and it's a beautiful notion. Whether we ever get to that point is unclear. Young generation as the most racially tolerant, racially aware, most globally connected, most computer savvy generation we've ever had, and I think that's all great stuff, and that's going to move it all in a better place, maybe even closer to what amounts to a better reality.
The one you're in. Where I am is perfect reality. You know, wherever you are is perfectly good. It's really about changing yourself to adapt to the world you're in. But if you're adapting to a false world, the world of advertising and corporations, That's not real growth.